We are going to be visiting my chicken coop. I keep a small flock primarily to keep me sane, so to speak. I don't have to go to a psychiatrist. I just sit and watch my chickens and play with my chickens. And I've been working with poultry since 1973 and have had this small flock for about 22 years now. So hopefully, as Jackie said, if you have a question, either type it in and she'll relay it to me, or we'll save it towards the end. So welcome to my coop. This is my coop. One of the things I want to talk about, and one of my philosophies, I guess, is that I feel animal management, in this case poultry management, is the million little things we do each day to keep our animals comfortable and free from stress and disease. It's not one magic bullet. Oftentimes people say, well, what about this? Or, how about if I just do this? It's not just one thing we do, it's the million little things we do for our birds. And hopefully I can stress that to you today. Just a couple of primary considerations before we actually get on our tour is that I do have to consider the welfare of my animals, and I do this because I have egg layers and I want them to be good egg layers. So the freedoms, I want to make sure that they always have food and good clean water in front of them. I don't want them to be discomfortable or feel any uncomfort. I want them not to hurt themselves or be in distress. I like for them to get and express any normal behaviors. And again, freedom from fear and distress, meaning what kind of good predator protection, because as you all know, everything loves to eat chicken, including myself, but not my own birds. The other big consideration, and one that'll be emphasized on this coop tour, is biosecurity. I take this very seriously. I work with Dr. Julie Helm, our state poultry veterinarian, with the National Poultry Improvement Plan, and I want to make sure that my birds are good, safe, healthy birds. Biosecurity, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what this is, but it's keeping our birds free from any kind of disease. And of course, we don't raise chickens in a sterile environment, and so they're constantly being challenged with bacteria, molds, mildews, insects, rodents that carry diseases, viruses, mycoplasma, you name it. And recently we've even had issues with some mycotoxins in feed. So the basic, components I feel are, so how can we keep our birds free from disease? Cleanliness is one of the things I stress. Part of my philosophy also is that I'm working in that environment that my birds are living in, so I like it to be clean. I want it to be rodent and insect free as best I can. I do live in the South. The South gets very hot in the summer. We do have plenty of insects to go around, mosquitoes, flies, you name it, fleas and ticks, all are contributors. The other real main issue for me is traffic control, which means vector or living carriers of disease. That means other people coming to see my coop. That means my pets, insects, of course, rodents, another issue. So also extremely important to try to keep them away from your birds and out of your coop. Fomites being all that equipment that we bring in, and there again, that goes back to keeping everything clean and sanitary. And again, I'm not stressing that it has to be a specific pathogen free, but if we can keep it neat and clean, that certainly helps our animals keep free from disease. So what kind of chickens are in my coop? I have what's known as a closed flock, which means that my chickens come there They never leave there. I know that's difficult for some people who like to show or take the birds or sell their birds. But I have a close flock, and for reasons that I'm the small flock specialist for the state, I don't want to be taking disease to other flocks that I'm visiting, and I certainly don't want to bring back disease to my birds. Presently, I've got 13 golden comets, 3 different age groups. I have 3 that are about 8 years old. I have 5 that are about 2.5 years old or so. And then I have what I call my green girls, my new girls. They're only about a year old. All these birds have come from a hatchery that is part of the National Poultry Improvement Plan. They've been tested. Their breeders have been tested for pullurum and typhoid. They are also retested again when the birds are sold or taken to shows. These particular birds come from the South Carolina 4-H members, which I'm going to brag on them a little bit. They do an excellent job with raising these birds from day-old chicks to about 5 or 6 months of age. I purchased these birds at the end of that 5 or 6 months. The young people, the 4-Hers, have to sell back anywhere from 5 to 6 birds, and they do a pullet chain auction, and that's where I purchase my birds. Money goes back to 4-H, so the next group of young people can raise more chickens next year that I can buy. I like golden comets. They're a very docile breed. They're good, steady egg layers, very persistent, intensive layers. They don't eat a lot. I usually purchase about 5 birds each year. If I do get new birds, they are isolated for a minimum of 30 days. They are not let out. I keep them confined. I keep them away from the birds that have been on my premise, for anywhere from 2 to 8 or 10 years. A little bit more about my chickens, just that they're fed a basic laying crumble diet, which is 16% protein with additional calcium. I let them out every day for about 2 hours. I do, as I mentioned earlier, everything loves to eat chicken. I live in the woods. My biggest problem is my neighbor's dogs. I do have foxes, coyotes, skunks, possums, hawks. I even have a bear that wanders through every so often. So I like my birds to get out, to scratch around, just, express those natural behaviors for their welfare. But I never let them out and not be in attendance. Although I have had birds killed by my neighbor's dog when I was out there, as well as from a red-tailed hawk. So even I'm not faster than those 2 animals. Favorite treats are, they love mealworms, they love peanut butter cheese crackers, of course, cantaloupe and watermelon, and they're relishing this time of year when they get all those special little treats. So just to talk about some of the chores that I do, and then I will show you some pictures of my coop. Every day I shake down my feeders, all my feeders are kept topped off, make sure there's always food in front of my birds. I have 3-gallon waters for each 5 birds. Each pen that you will see has a water cup that fills when the birds press down on the little yellow tab. Every day I remove poop from underneath the roosts. Birds like to empty their cecal pouches, which is one of the last portions of their digestive tract before they get off the roost in the morning. This allows me to look at their poop, which is an excellent indicator of disease. So I'm looking for, is there any blood in their poop, any worms? I like to see the consistency of the poop, make sure it looks like good, healthy chicken poop. I top dress with fresh shavings when necessary, after I've removed the kind of poopy shavings, so to speak. I have a hallway where I sweep daily. I knock down cobwebs. I pick up my eggs twice a day, sometimes 3 times as we approach the warm summer months. It gets very warm, very humid in South Carolina. For those that don't have to experience that, you're very lucky. So oftentimes I will pick up the eggs 3 times a day and take them to the house. I wash all my eggs by hand daily, let them dry and refrigerate. Weekly, I steam clean my floors. I check my insect traps. I clean my 3-gallon waters or my 5-gallon water that you'll see in a minute on a weekly basis. So welcome to my coop. When I have visitors, I ask them to wear plastic shoe covers and a bouffant, which makes them look like the lunch ladies. This is just to, I don't know where they've been most of the time. If people come and visit, they also do not have chickens, but I don't want to take a chance. So having plastic shoe covers and this bouffant, which are disposable after they visit the coop, that helps. So always have those ready for my visitors to put on. This is the view of the front of my chicken coop. As you can see, there are pens on either side, and we'll get a more detailed look at that in a bit. I have 8 pens total, 4 on each side of the chicken house. This is a view from the back of the chicken house. There is a back door with a little porch. This gives me direct access. My workroom is in the back of the chicken house, separated by a door into the pens. So my workroom can be made completely separate by the use of a standard door. This is just a view of one side of my chicken house with 4 pens. I used 1x2 wire, and there is also wire on top of the pens as well. Critters are very resourceful. They either want to go under, over the top. They will manage to find any way they can to get at their food source. My pen sizes on the outside are 9 feet by 7 inches long by 4 feet wide. The inside pens are 5 feet 6 inches long by 3 feet 4 inches wide. Each pen has 3 roosts at various heights. Each pen has a feeder and a water. Then in every other pen, for each 5 birds, I add the 3-gallon water inside to make sure my birds always have plenty of water. They are egg layers. An egg is about 74% water, so water is extremely important to our egg layers, as to all living things. Each inside pen has about 3 to 4 inches of pine shavings, and I also add diatomaceous earth to those shavings as well, just to kind of deter insects. I do keep 1 pen isolated, so really my birds are in 7 pens. One is a hospital pen that's set aside for any bird that may have what we call ADR, just ain't doing right is what we call that. This is a little picture of it. It's isolated completely from the other birds. Usually if a bird isn't doing right, I keep them inside. Don't want the other birds picking on them, as well as then it has its own food and water. So it's always a good idea for biosecurity. If you start to see a sick bird, isolate it from the rest of your birds. It doesn't have to be a separate pen, obviously. Some people bring them in the house. Some people even use dog coops, dog crates. That works just as well. But keep that bird that just isn't doing right away from your other birds so that if it is something infectious, all your birds don't get it. Here's the view on the other side. Again, plenty of wire on the top, the bottom, the sides to make sure that no predators can get in. I also have on the outside by my back door a wash area. We bought an old sink at an antique place. It's hooked up to a frost-free faucet. I do not have hot water in my chicken house. The frost-free faucet, this just helps with ease of cleaning. You can see there's 4 3-gallon waters sitting out there, ready to be washed. It just makes it easier for me to do it at a sink height. As I said, we did not pay very much for the sink, and in the wintertime, I know it gets cold. We do have detached, the frost-free faucet. The hoses detach with quick release type of thing. And we may just hook up the hose. We won't hook up the entire sink because I don't want to have to drain it every time I use it. So this can be used in the winter. Our guest from Utah, this probably system wouldn't work, but it certainly does in the Southeast. It's been very effective and very easy for me to use. I view cleaning, which is, as I mentioned before, important part of biosecurity, as a 4-step process. I rinse to try to get off the big, chunks of dirt. I scrub with a brush and with soap and water, rinse everything thoroughly, and then oftentimes I let it dry in the sun. So far, they're not charging us for sun. The sun is a good, excellent sanitizer. Gets everything, and usually bacteria, viruses, disease-causing agents don't like things hot and dry. So, there are those few exceptions, but the sun is excellent. My 3-gallon waters, as I said, I clean those weekly. The 5-gallon water is also done once a week. The other thing that I like about my chicken house, and I'm grateful that I have a husband that likes to build things, but I have a huge, on each side, a good 3-foot overhang. So as the birds can come out of the inside pens, they have about 3 feet of good dry soil and mixed with some shavings. And again, I use diatomaceous earth in the outside pens to try to keep insects at bay. Occasionally we do get snow here. My chickens, for some reason, do not like snow, so they just go out as far as underneath the overhang where it's dry. Same with the rain. And lately we've had quite a bit. We had 6 inches over the this past weekend, and so they don't like to, for some reason, get wet. I guess I have to get them galoshes in a raincoat. So having that large overhang, it has a gutter on it. So this works out quite nicely for the birds to keep at least one portion of the pen very dry. Also, that's a area where my birds can dust because it's very dry underneath there as well. This is the inside of my chicken house. When I retired, I wanted to learn how to tile, so I thought I'd try the chicken house first. So with the help of a friend who tiles regularly and had the tile saw, I tiled the floor just to get the practice. And so far, the chickens like it pretty well. You're looking at the door that separates my workroom from my pens. As you can see, there's a solid door that can be closed, so my workroom can remain separate. And you're looking towards the front door of my chicken house. I have inside the chicken house a little, this again was a great garage say you'll find $10, a man asked for $10. I said, I got it. It's sold. I use this as my egg storage cabinet. So I can collect my eggs, keep them behind glass. Occasionally, as I said, I live in the South. I do get black rat snakes. I do get king snakes that come in looking for eggs as well. They haven't figured out how to open the cabinet as of yet, so this has been a great deterrent for them stealing my eggs. So the eggs, as I mentioned, are picked up twice daily. In the very hot time of the summer, I will go in and pick them up a third time to make sure they're all picked up. Most of the birds are laying before noon. I collect them on a ceramic holder. That ceramic holder then can be washed daily and cleaned. For egg washing, my eggs are brought to the house on that ceramic holder, which can be washed. I know some people have 200, 300 eggs. Obviously, I only get about from my girls about 10 eggs a day. My older chickens usually don't lay very well. As I said, it's a closed flock, so they come to my house. They pretty much die at my house. So each egg is individually washed in warm flowing tap water at my house. And then I allow those to dry completely. Again, keeping things very dry deters bacteria as well. Then I use new cartons for the eggs. I don't reuse cartons. For my customers, which are usually my family, which get the eggs for free. I do refrigerate all my eggs in order to help keep those functional properties or those reasons why we use eggs and other foods stable. This is a picture of my work storage, my work room, which I use, as I said, for storage. I also have another old sink that we bought there. That's hooked up to the same faucet, frost-free faucet on the outside. Below that window is where the outdoor sink is located. Again, this helps if I want to do some spot cleaning. Again, it is cold water that I do use. I do not have hot water available. This is another view standing at the sink, looking at the other end of my workroom where I keep feed. I keep my equipment stored in cabinets and try to keep things free from dust. My feed I keep in a rolling storage bin, so I can roll that out of the workroom and roll it down the aisle to where my pens are. I keep my feed in the bag that it came from. When I get a bag of feed, I always try to get a small baggie filled with feed that I take to the house and put in the refrigerator just in case, if I suddenly have birds that, start to drop over, I can test, have the feed tested. The other thing I like to do as I go use my feed scoop and get down in the bag of feed, I keep that rolled down. That helps me also know how much feed is left in that particular 50-pound bag, and lets me know when I need to go back to the feed store. The other thing is, this is me outside my chicken house with one of my girls. These are the clothes I only wear at the chicken house. I do not wear these to town, especially the shoes. Those particular shoes I wear only go to my chicken house, and I never wear them off of, off of our farm. Inside, I take those shoes off that I wear on the outside, and I have a pair of slippers, Crocs, that I wear on the inside. They're a little more comfortable, and since I spend, time every day cleaning my chicken house, I like to be comfortable, and so those Crocs never leave the inside of the chicken house. This is the 5-gallon water, gravity-fed water system that I use. That bucket, as I said, gets washed weekly, scrubbed out and washed, and then, of course, refilled. It's on a pulley system to help me get it up and down, basically for cleaning and washing. And from each of the 5-gallon from that 5-gallon bucket, in each pen is a simple, what I call like a poisson water, where the bird depresses the little lever, water comes out, and so these birds have, so my chickens have access to plenty of water, as I said. This is the 5-gallon. Each 5 birds has an additional 3-gallon water. You'll note I use plastic liter drink holders. I get from the Coca-Cola man or the soft drink man. They're nice because they're plastic. They're easy to wash and clean on a regular basis, and so it's very important that I keep that water and that feed at about back height, which is normal for and the ease of birds to eat and drink. This particular one has a I had to use a pointed top. These particular girls like to get on top, and of course then they poop, and then I have to clean the whole water. So the pointed top from another feeder that I have kind of deters them from doing that. So that's a good idea if you have birds that like to sit up on top of their waters, if you have waters like this, and do their poop. So in the wintertime, I do have heated waters in addition to the 3-gallon, as well as the waters from the 5-gallon. This is a 40-watt bulb. This particular water just sits on top. It only holds about 1 gallon of water, so those have to be cleaned probably 2 to 3 times a week. They get a little bit slimy. Don't like that for my birds. My electrical outlets are on top of my pens, so that prevents having any water splash down and into the outlet. This works out quite well to keep things to keep those winter waters working. And as I said, again, every 5 birds will have an additional heated water in the wintertime. The feeder that I use is just a hanging feeder at back height. I top it off daily. I also shake it down, make sure, especially here in the South, as I mentioned, the humidity, feed can tend to stick together, clump, shaking it, making sure that I'm not getting clumps, not getting parts of my feed where I have clumped feed, which then starts to mold. Also, checking for mold. That can be a big problem with us, as I said, in the humid South, especially in our summer months. I do use a timer. I have LED lights in my chicken house. They get 14 hours of light. The timer is set at 6 a.m. To go off in the morning, and then the lights turn off at 8 o'clock at night. I do keep them on this regimen all year round. My birds lay all year round. They seem to be fine with this very regular routine as well. My chickens, I started out using nest boxes, and they did not want to use the nest box. So since I'm constantly cleaning the shavings and top dressing, they prefer to lay in a corner. Those eggs were just laid. They're that clean. Of course, I do wash my eggs, but my chickens seem to prefer this and the system versus nest boxes. Here's cleaning under the roosts. As I said, birds empty their cecal pouches before they get off the roost. So the poop just sits right there on top of the shavings. So using a small little child's rake for gardening and a dustpan, I rake in the poopy shavings, and yes, sometimes I get some good ones in there. I collect them. We compost our shavings with the poop. We will probably not use this for another year. We also have a vegetable garden, and by a year's time, we have some very nice, rich composted soil to put around our vegetables. This is me just top dressing. I just lay out additional fresh shavings. I use pine shavings. They are large pine shavings. I don't like to use a small, dusty kind. I'm very particular about the shavings that I use. But I use pine shavings, of course. Peanut hulls can be used. Corn husks. There are other shavings that might be more available, but here in the Southeast, again, pine is very prevalent and so very inexpensive to use. As I said, when you're picking a shaving, it should be large, should prevent odor, be very dry. As I mentioned before, with our humid South, make sure that you're turning those shavings as well. I oftentimes, every day, kind of flip the shavings around in the inside of the pen. It can't be irritating to your chicken. I do mix them with, you can see in that picture, the gray is diatomaceous earth. Use the Codex brand, which means that it is edible. There is another diatomaceous earth that's used for swimming pools, but don't buy that one. Usually at your feed store, you will have diatomaceous earth available. As I said, it is a deterrent, and people have told me, oh, it does this, that, miracle things. It is used to insects do not like to be around it. It dries them out. So and keeps those shavings dry as well. There's a small receptacle. Save all your old toothbrushes. I love to use toothbrushes to clean these small receptacles that are used with the tubing from my 5-gallon water. And that way, make sure that the birds are getting good, clean, fresh water. The other point I want to make too about the 3-gallon waters is that I empty the reservoir of those every single day. So if there's any stagnant water, any water with feed in there, that gets rinsed out, or a fresh batch comes in. In my pens, I have grass growing. I have trees. We built a pen actually around this tree. Just to have a little bit of difference. I put rocks in there, anything for a little bit of enrichment. I have solid doors, as I mentioned, for the winter time to prevent drafts if it gets really cold. And in the summertime, I screen doors if I need to keep a bird in, but need to make sure it has plenty of ventilation. I have a good screen door for summer. I do have that exhaust fan, which helps pull air through. That's all it does. It does not blow on the chicken. It just sucks air through. I have a ridge cap on the top of my roof, plus the doors are open, so in the pen, so it will pull any air through, and that's good enough in a small flock situation just to keep air moving, and the chicken house does stay fairly cool. Other thing I do for predator prevention, when we built the pens, we put 2 courses of cement block. We dug a trench around the outside pens, put 2 courses of cement blocks, then put treated wood on top, and then the wire. Usually if it's a digging animal, they get down to about the first course, and then they kind of stop, realizing that they're digging, their digging is for no reason, because they can't get into the to the pen. For insect control, I use fly predators on the poop. I also sometimes have problems with ants, so I just use, I don't use any chemicals. I just use fly ant baits, or ant, that attract the ants to get in there. I don't want, of course, this is on the outside of the pens, so I don't want birds or anything to get into any chemicals. So this does a fairly good job. My last fly control is I use pheromone baits. Please remember to place those far away from, or at a distance, so that the flies are attracted there. Don't hang them on your chicken house, because that's where the flies will go. So important, keep those at a distance from your house to attract the flies to that location. I also use a fly swatter if they're, I have fly swatter. If, they do get into the house, I will swat them and try to get rid of them. And that's my chicken house, and my chickens think I'm amazing. At least I bought that plate that said that. So any questions? Jackie, are there any questions?
Sorry, my system crashed.
Oh, I'm sorry too.
So I just got back on finally.
Okay.
The whole system. So hopefully the recording did not get screwed up. We have one question. Was it hard to train the chickens to drink from the small water cups?
Absolutely not. When I first get chickens in, as I said, I buy 5 every year. They stay inside. I don't let them outside for about a day and a half. So I show them where the little cups are, dip their beaks in there. They know where it is. Plus they have the additional 5-gallon water, but no, they actually enjoy, they probably drink out of that more than they do the 3-gallon water. The 3-gallon water is probably more for my satisfaction, knowing that there's always plenty of water there. But no, they go right to it, press down on the little yellow lever. I don't, I know that's real technical, but, and it fills the cup, and they enjoy that very much. And I've had very good luck with it. Not any leaks with that particular system. So, and I like it that water is captured or caught, and not, just dripping, all the time.
I think that most chickens can learn.
Oh,
whether it's nipple drinkers, cup drinkers,
right.
The whatever, they're pretty quick at learning. Sometimes it takes a while to adjust if they grew up with one and switch to the other.
Yeah.
So if you have people coming to see your coop, what do you allow them to come in and see?
If I always ask, of course, if they have chickens, and if they do, I ask if they, if they do. In fact, I have one friend that has chickens. She showers before she comes. I make her put on boots and a bouffant when she comes into the chicken house. This is the least I can ask, but I always want to know where people have been and where they're going as well. I don't have a guest book or anything like that. Maybe that would be a good thing, but I don't have a lot of visitors, and I would personally, because of my position working for the state and going to other people's farms and working with 4-H birds, I would personally rather show them pictures. But if someone does come, they will put on the plastic boots. They will put on a bouffant. I will ask if they, have contact with chickens. Oftentimes, if I have to go out, here's something I'm real strict with. If I go out and have to blood test for 4-H birds or work a show with my 4-H kids or do a small flock where I'm handling somebody else's birds, that day I will not see my birds. When I get home, all those clothes, including the underwear, everything goes in the washing machine. Again, I would take a shower before I went the next day to visit my birds. I'm very nervous. We do have disease outbreaks in places, and with my position, I'm very concerned that I don't take disease anywhere or bring it back to my birds. So
Right.
I'm really strict about my own biosecurity.
Right. So a lot of people need to be very careful when they decide to open their coop up for a tour,
Correct.
to make sure that nobody's bringing anything in at all. I know here in Lexington, Kentucky, we have Tour de Coops, and the first year that they did it, I mean, it was horrible because one, they didn't screen their coops to make sure that they are clean and well organized, well built, and all those things, not quite as fancy as yours, but at least meet a standard, that should be met for any coop. And then they had people going, and there must have been about 500 people who participated, who went from one house to the other, to the other, to the other. I highly recommend not doing that.
Correct.
And we at least got them to use booties the second year, but they had very few of them, and they reused them for each person. So yeah, if you're going to host anybody, especially a large group coming to your coop, biosecurity is extremely important. So I really like to emphasize that. So
yeah, I as I said, I have a closed flock, which means my birds don't leave there. They come there, they die. Like my husband tells me, all my animals, he said, they just come here to die, but they live long, good lives. Most of my chickens live 8 to 10 years, if not longer. The other issue, with that biosecurity, if you're going to shows, again, you're bringing birds from all over. I know they're blood tested, part of National Poultry Improvement Plan. But the other thing is what you do when you go home, isolate those birds from your flock as well. We're coming up on our big show time. The fall is very big for our 4-H shows, for our fairs, for all kinds of things. And think about, that, as I said, when you, take your birds other places, or as I said, you invite people. It's extremely important to know where people come from. I've never hosted 500. I don't think I'd want to. you know, but
Yeah.
maybe, as I said, a slide set would be probably better
Yeah.
with regard to that. So,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
think also making sure that your facility highlights the key points of taking care of birds, and so that the animal rights people don't get upset, that you're not teaching possible new people the wrong things to do, and you know, all of those things to be kept in mind. So I'm not seeing any other questions. I did have one. You washed your eggs, right?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you wash them without hot water?
Well, no, I bring them to the house. I think,
Oh, okay.
or did I try? I
I
bring
may
them
have missed that.
to my house. I collect them twice a day, bring them to the house. I have a soft brush. I do have hot water in my house. I do bathe regularly.
Good to know.
And I do wash them with warm water, then allow them to dry, and then refrigerate them. Again, to
For food.
I might not have made that clear. I'm sorry.
I may have missed it. I was trying to deal with something else at the same time.
Yeah, right. With a crashed computer.
I just remembered you said you didn't have hot water at your facility. So
No, I do not, but I do at home. So I wash them here, and every egg is washed. So I know some people don't believe in that, and they don't believe in refrigeration. It's the standard for our commercial industry, and I
for
feel
some places it's state law.
yes,
Kentucky
absolutely.
has state law. So
okay.
Okay, so thank you guys very much for sticking around to the end. We don't have any webinars currently scheduled, but we should be starting up again in August with a new webinar series. As I said, if you have any ideas for webinar topics that you would like to see discussed, just email me. I am re-putting in my email address so that if you came late, you can get it and you can email me the thing. As I said, this is being recorded, and the recording will be up shortly. Thank you very much, Mickey. Thank you,
everyone. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
And hopefully we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.